today. We have Utsa Chinedu from Leadway Pensure, and he's going to talk about how he uses Zerto Virtual Replication to protect his Microsoft SQL Server environment. So before we move on from the first slide, a couple things I'd like to point out. First, if you want to ask questions, you are absolutely encouraged to do so. In the panel that appeared on the right-hand side of my screen, you'll see there's a questions tab. So you can type in your questions, and we'll take them definitely at the end. If the opportunity presents itself in the middle of the presentation, we'll take them then as well. But we have reserved 10 minutes or so at the end of the presentation to take questions. And then the second thing I'd like to point out on the first slide is all our awards. So you can see we got Best of Show at VMworld in 2011. That was actually just a few weeks after we released the first version of the product. So the fact that we were able to get such a prestigious award so quickly out of the gate really showed to us that we were on the right track with this product, and it's something that the market was really waiting for. So today, I'm going to introduce Utsa in just a few minutes, but just to see our agenda. So he's going to tell you about his organization, Leadway Pensure, give you an overview of his environment, challenges that he's faced with BCDR. We also have a slide on best practices, and then why he selected Zerto. And then after you hear from Utsa, I'll give you a few more details on Zerto Virtual Replication, and then how you can learn more. So Bez, I know that you want to hear about the customer experience and not so much from the Director of Product Marketing. So I'm going to turn it over to Utsa Chinedu, who's the Infrastructure Manager at Leadway Pensure. He has 10 years of IT experience. You can see he has several certifications from Microsoft and VMware. So his key responsibilities include disaster recovery for his entire organization, the data continuity planning and information availability, and also he manages and maintains all critical applications such as Microsoft SQL Server and also some custom applications within his environment. So Utsa, I will turn it over to you.
Good evening and good morning, everyone. My name is Utsa from Leadway Pensure, Lagos, Nigeria. I work with Leadway Pensure, and this company was established in 2005. Born out of 4 companies that merged: Leadway Assurance, Custodian and Allied Insurance, Prestigious Insurance, and NBC Securities Limited. Next slide. Now, our infrastructure is 95% virtualized today. We started off with physical servers, but decided to go down the virtualization route because that provides for us a more efficient way of using our resources and achieving our company goals. We have 2 sites, one at Ikporinso, Lagos, and a disaster recovery site at Maryland, Lagos. We have applications such as SQL Server, which is our main application. And that machine has the biggest capacity so far, a 2 terabyte VM. We have other applications running on Linux, some custom applications running on Java, Active Directory, file servers. Now, our storage is based off from 2 vendors. We have HP P2000 G3 MSA, and recently acquired the EMC VNX 5400. Now, the physical servers we are using for our virtualization environment includes the HP ProLiant G5, G7, and G8 servers. Now, we have a fully redundant virtual infrastructure, and the bandwidth between our production sites and recovery sites is 12 meg as of today. Next slide. Now, the challenges we had in obtaining a BCDR solution involved getting a solution that could help us protect our most critical business application, our SQL Server, of a size of 2 terabyte VM, and we wanted to replicate this in an efficient way. We wanted to ensure that our write order fidelity across VMs, and also to allow us to test solutions without having impact on our production environment. Next slide. Now, our purchasing process was a tedious one for us because we tested some other solutions and couldn't get exactly what we needed to suit our environment. We had an experience with double take. The initial setup was easy, the failover was okay, but there was no failback. It took a long time to actually replicate, to do the first replication, but failing back to our production sites was just impossible for us. We also tested VMware SRM. Now, that took a very long time. We started off by configuring the solution. The first challenge we had was replicating a VM of a 2 terabyte size that had 4 different VMDKs sitting in 4 different data stores, and replicating that 4 different VMDKs into a single data store at the DRO site. SRM couldn't work. We tested this for months, even involved engineers from VMware, and we just couldn't get it to work. Now, we also found out that there was a solution out there which we tested and we were okay with it. Now, my first touch of Zerto was an amazing experience for me, because when I was narrating my challenges to the engineer I was speaking with, he just kept telling me, it's okay, it can be done, it can be done. I was really surprised because the other solutions I tested was really vigorous and we couldn't get any headway. But all I was getting from Zerto was, it can be done, it can be done. Now, we set off to test, and to my amazement, the entire solution was done in 1 hour for production on DRO site, and we started replicating immediately. I was surprised, and because this thing happened so fast on a Friday, and I wanted the engineer to complete everything we needed to do about setting up our entire infrastructure before Monday. He agreed, and he was willing to even work with me during the weekend, which other vendors would not do. So on Sunday, we completed the installation and everything started replicating. Our preceding replication kicked off and everything was fine. Now, I noticed that I was able to replicate my SQL transaction logs at a very high rate compared to the other solutions. For every data that was created in the production, that was immediately replicated to DRO. I was really very happy with it because to me, this was a solution that we've sought out for so long, and on saying it, it worked exactly the way we expected it to. Now, the best practices for SQL no longer needed ZVRO to be able to replicate SQL Server. Zerto replication works regardless of the type of infrastructure our visualization was running on. Because one of the challenges we had was that at the DRO site, we had a direct attached storage to our server, while on the production side, we had a complete SAN solution. Now, because of my experience and still the shock I got in getting the solution, I gave Zerto a nickname, a miracle for BC and DRO, because that was the way my own management team saw it. It was a miracle because this was a solution we sought out for over a year. We didn't have any replication going. But immediately we got in touch with Zerto, we were fine and we had a replication going. Next slide. Now, the best practices for BC and DRO using SQL Server, from what we've experienced so far, we tested out with a 5 meg WAN link, and to enhance the performance, we gradually increased until we got to 12 meg, which was sizable enough to move to allow our data movement between the production and DRO sites. So we settled for 12 meg. I would also advise that the drives that should be used for replication should be fast drives, because for our production environment, we had 15K drives, and on our DRO site we had 7.2K drives. This had a lot of impact on our replication. But despite the size of the drives we had at the DRO site, Zerto replication still works regardless of what infrastructure we had there. And I would recommend that using Zerto, it will be best to have all your VMs in one data store. That way, the challenge we had of having our multiple VMs in different data stores wouldn't come into play. Though Zerto actually took care of that, but it's best to have all your VMs in one data store. Next slide. Now, why Zerto? Zerto was able to give us our agreed RPO of seconds and our RTO of less than 15 minutes. It was very easy and very simple to install. Installation was very easy, both on the production side and at the DRO side. Highly confident, performed. We carry out 2 tests, 2 DRO tests in a year. And each time we run this test, I just sit back on my chair and I just smile because everything goes perfectly well without any issues. I'm able to replicate my SQL Server even during high risk of change. Right order fidelity, application consistency wasn't any problem for me at all. Now, a feature I really love about Zerto was the journaling. Journaling allows me to fail back to any point in time. I can pick a date, I can pick a time and roll my machine out at that particular point in time, and that to me was an amazing feature. Now, another part of Zerto that I'm really impressed with is the sales and support. My encounter with Zerto from the day one, the salesman I talked to, the technical team, it has always been an exciting and rewarding experience for me. And I have no regrets that I chose Zerto today. Next slide.
All right, great. Thank you so much, Utsa. So you can see why I want you to hear from our customers, because when they're so excited, I got to tell you, whenever I speak with Utsa, I'm just so happy because he's such a happy customer. He has told me what many of our customers have said, which is, you know, you said your product would do A, B, and C, but I've heard that before. I've heard that from many other vendors. You know, you're going to solve world peace and all these things, and we get the product in and it doesn't perform. He said, you know, I was talking with my sales guy, and he said, it's going to do this. It's not going to be a problem. It's going to work. Try it. Do a POC. Try it. You won't be sorry. And you can hear that, you know, it worked for Utsa, and he's very, very pleased with the product. So, and I'm very fortunate that we have so many very, very happy customers who are able to do webinars with us. So I guess if we were to take a step back and look at storage replication with virtual replication. So this isn't exactly what Utsa had in his environment, but it is one of the configurations that many of you probably have in your environment. So the problem here is that you're trying to force fit kind of a physical solution into a virtual environment. So what does that mean you need to do? It means you need to take all your VMs, you need to map them to a specific LUN. You have to ensure the replication is going to happen at that level. And then you cannot make any changes to your storage environment after that. I had another customer recently tell me, he goes, you know, we can't architect for performance. We have to architect for BCDR. And where they've made the investment in some very high-end arrays, similar to Leadway Pensure, you know, they're not able to get their full investment out of it because they have to architect it in a different way. So here you can see it's a very complex process. It's manual and inflexible. And in times when you're in an emergency and you need to fail over, you don't want anything manual because that presents an opportunity for an error. So with Zerto, it gets down to 5 very simple steps. And you heard from Utsa, it's very, very easy. So all you have to do is ensure you have storage at your target site, pick out the VMs you want to replicate, you put them together in a virtual protection group, configure processes, and that's it. Because it's a virtual aware solution, you can make changes in your environment and move things around as you see fit to get better performance or better availability or whatever it is that you need for your environment, and your BCDR processes will not be disturbed. So with that, we have Zerto Virtual Replication, so virtual aware. What I mean by that is we replicate VMs and VMDKs. We don't care about the storage. We don't care about any of the underlying infrastructure. We only care about what is in the hypervisor. It's a software-only solution, so that gives you 2 things. 1, it installs seamlessly into your existing infrastructure. When you're talking about a production workload, you've probably architected it very, very carefully. And then you need to do BCDR, and that team comes in and tells you all the changes you need to make after you've done this very, very careful planning. With Zerto, you don't need to change that very, very carefully planned architecture. And it scales beautifully, and you'll see this in the architecture. As you grow your environment, you're just adding another virtual replication appliance, which makes things a lot easier so you can maintain that simple, consistent BCDR process across the environment. And it's built for production workloads. So what do I mean by that? Key feature that Utsa mentioned, the journal. So that's 1 hour up to 5 days worth of data. You get a point every couple of seconds. So you can roll back to that point if you had a logical corruption, you did an upgrade or something like that. We have something called a virtual protection group, which delivers application consistency. And you saw the service levels. Very, very aggressive. RPOs of seconds, RTOs of minutes. So here we have an overview of our architecture. It's a simple overview because here we have 2 sites, and we are able to protect amongst multiple sites. So the Zerto Virtual Manager is a plugin to the vCenter server that is the only piece of software that you'll touch. It's going to push out the Zerto Virtual Replication appliances, as you saw in the animation, and one of those will be installed on each ESX host. That's what delivers that seamless scalability. Just as you add another ESX host, you just install another virtual replication appliance. Much better than a hardware-based solution, because with a hardware-based solution, you have a physical appliance, and it might work very, very well when you have 5 ESX hosts, but what about when you have 8 or 10 or 15? Now you have to drop in another appliance, and that adds another layer of complexity. So as Utsa mentioned, he can replicate from anything to anything. So this gives him better utilization of his storage investment, and he can architect for performance versus BCDR. We already talked about the scalability. And the replication is continuous block level replication. That's how we're able to deliver that RPO of seconds. The journal, really I can't compete with a customer description, so we'll go with how Utsa really likes it. And then lastly, we do have some bandwidth optimization. So you can do compression or throttling because we want to make sure that BCDR isn't dominating the network. Again, we're talking about your production applications. We want to make sure that they have the network bandwidth that they need to execute your daily activities. Okay, and the application protection groups. So the virtual protection groups. This is a group of VMs that make up something, say SQL Server, SAP, Exchange, whatever it is. So all you do is locate the VMs that are part of that application, and you can put them together in a virtual protection group. What that tells Zerto is no matter where they are in the environment, you need to protect those in the same manner. So they have the same SLA objective in terms of RPO, RTO, they have the same journal, and also you can do things within the environment in the protection group like boot order. So maybe you want the database server available first, then the application server, and then the web server. You can also re-IP if that's needed on failover. This enables us to fully support some of the cool features in VMware like vMotion, storage vMotion, HAVApp. If you're using a physical-based replication solution, you have to disable those, unfortunately, because, again, that relationship between the VM and the LUN is so very, very important. And we also have VSS support to provide an extra layer of application consistency. So we've talked a lot about the data. So grouping the VMs, replicating the data, and making sure it gets to the target site. But that's really half of the solution. The other half is in orchestration. And Zerto fully automates the failover, failback, and recovery of your virtual machines. So virtual machines get sent over to your target site, they're protected. So when you have an event you need to fail over, you just click the arrow, which you'll see in the GUI. And Zerto begins to build those virtual machines on your target site. Because we've set up the boot order, the re-IP, and those other steps that we've already discussed, this only takes a few minutes. We don't have shadow VMs on your target site. The click to test anytime, so you can, it's just a one-click to test the environment. Your production environment will not be impacted during this test. Replication will still be happening. And if in the event an outage happens while you're doing your test, you can stop the test immediately and do your failover as needed. You can click to test the most recent point in time or any point in time, whatever it is that you need to do for your environment. And then we also provide an offsite cloning feature. So with this, you can create a copy at your target site. So for example, instead of taking backups off your production site, you're already replicating the data. Use the infrastructure on your target site for backups. And actually a new feature that I wanted to mention with the journal is the flexible journal. So you're going to set your journal based on time, but that's also going to have an associated storage need. With the flexible journal, as transactions begin to build, maybe you have end of the month or end of the quarter activities where there's a lot of change, the journal will automatically increase in size to make sure that that data is not lost, to make sure that you do maintain your SLA of your 5-day journal if that's what you set, or your 3-day journal, or whatever it is that you need. Once that period of high activity starts to wind down, Zerto sees that as well and begins to give storage back and shrink down the journal size. Simple management from anywhere. So you can see here that in the screen on the upper left, that's the vSphere plugin, and there's a tab there for Zerto, and there you see an overview. And we also have a browser-based plugin. It has the same functionality as the plugin vSphere. You can just access it from anywhere. A great use case for this, actually one of our customers uses it this way, is they just provide a link to the Zerto web-based interface in their SharePoint infrastructure because they don't want to give full vCenter privileges to their manager, but the manager has to do things like run reports to show that testing is being done and that kind of thing. So this way he doesn't have to give full vCenter access, but you can give him access to just Zerto, and he's able to get to the applications that he needs. So I mentioned we can do multiple site replication. So we can do replication to local offices. We have support for single vCenters. So you can have that consistent BCDR process across the infrastructure. We replicate from several sites to one shared infrastructure. So this enables the enterprise to really take advantage of all their assets within the environment and reduce costs and also keep the environment simple. And as you can imagine, this is something that's attractive to cloud providers. So we have many, many cloud providers that we're in discussions with are offering disaster recovery as a service. And this is a great way to evaluate the cloud because hopefully you're not having disasters all the time. This is kind of a once-in-a-while thing. So this is a great way to get comfortable with cloud providers. And I mentioned the remote and branch office support. So if you have an office that's maybe 10 or 15 miles away, that's physically separated, but logically the infrastructure is recognized as part of the same vCenter. So we can do replication from those local offices into your corporate data center. Also new in 3.0 is comprehensive reporting. So we've added something called an audit report. So that shows each step within the recovery process and the time that it takes. So this is really helpful to many, many of our customers because now they can go back to their management and say, we're going to recover our SharePoint with 4 VMs and 10 terabytes of data in 2 minutes and 43 seconds. I've run the test 5 times. That's the average. It also provides recovery resource planning reports. So it shows the resources consumed at the production and the target site so you can see what applications are using and better plan for acquisition of new assets, and also performance charts for throughput, bandwidth, etc. So you can see what's going on there as well. So we've talked a lot about private cloud BCDR with 2 sites, very similar to UTSA's environment. And as I mentioned, we do work with many cloud providers. So disaster recovery as a service is a great way to evaluate cloud providers. If you get more comfortable with them and you want to give them something even more challenging, you have an application that's very challenging for you and you'd like to give it to them altogether, then we have something called in-cloud BCDR. So the cloud provider manages the production and the DR site all within their environment. So we really think we have something new for disaster recovery. It's truly virtual aware. We're replicating VMs and virtual machines. It's for production workloads, delivering those very aggressive service levels. We deliver application level protection, so through the virtual protection groups. You're able to protect SQL, SharePoint, and other applications as well, homegrown applications that have several VMs. It's very easy to use, easy, and it scales beautifully for your environment. So, and with that, so here's our contact information. Should you have any questions you want to get in touch with us, I do see a couple that came in, and we'll take those in just a second. But if you have any questions for Utsa, certainly feel free to ask them. If you would like to ask me any questions, and I think I neglected to introduce myself at the beginning of the webinar. So my name is Jennifer Gill. I'm the Director of Product Marketing, and kind of our silent partner is Shannon Snowden. He's our Senior Technical Marketing Architect. And should you have any technical question that Utsa or I can't answer, Shannon can answer anything. So Shannon, we have a cloud provider question, so we're going to start with one for you right out of the gate.
Okay.
And it's, does the cloud provider option look different to the customer? So in other words, can the customer or manager determine what is with the cloud?
It's actually really granular as far as how you want the customer to interact with their virtual machines. So we have a Zerto self-service portal if you want to control their access via web browser to just very specific actions such as creating VPGs or doing failover tests but not actual failovers. So we can get to that level of granularity to where you're really controlling the interface, but you're also enabling more of a consumer type model, because with that capability in our cloud portion with the Cloud Manager, you're also you can set up service profiles. So it's basically templates for how the customers can actually provision their own virtual protection groups within the parameters that you've set for them. Otherwise, you can have it to where it's a managed private environment, essentially, where they're just logging in as an extension of their own data center.
Okay, great. And oops, actually, we have a couple questions that just came in for you. So have you had any challenges with Zerto? If please elaborate. And how many SQL guests are being protected?
For us, I've not really had any challenge with Zerto. My first experience, the only downside I see was reporting, because then I tested with a version 2, and that was fixed in version 3. So reporting is excellent in version 3, and there are no challenges with Zerto so far. What was the other question?
How many SQL guests are being protected?
We have two. The most critical one for us is the 2 terabyte VM. Then we also have a test SQL Server machine. That's about 1.6 terabyte also being protected.
Okay. And then someone has a question here. Shannon, I think it's for me and you. Have you tested this with Sybase, SQL Anywhere, and MySQL? So I do know of a customer who's using it with Sybase and has no issues. And I'm not sure if really it supports anything that VMware vSphere supports. So if you can virtualize it on the vSphere platform, then we can protect it. So Shannon, I don't know if you have anything to add.
Yeah, and so let's dive in a bit to the application consistent portion, which is what it's able to accomplish as well. So if you have Windows, we can leverage any application that is using VSS, because then we'll just tag along with the VSS quiesce, and we'll get a application consistent checkpoint. In Linux, it is whatever is quiescing the application in Linux. We'll do the same thing with a small little script, and we're able to capture application consistent checkpoints. So thinking along that lines, we're very agnostic to what kind of application it is. We work with whatever mechanism is quiescing the application. So we can get consistent checkpoints to be application consistent using whatever mechanism is being used to quiesce the application in the first place.
Okay, great. So Utsa, another question for you. Did you change the IP of the SQL Server during the 15-minute restore events? If so, how did you handle DNS resolution for the new IP?
Now, Zerto has a feature that allows you to inject IP address either during your test mode or your live failover or failback. Now for us, our DRO site is another network completely. So Zerto gave us that ability to inject IP addresses from our network, from the DRO network side into the machines. So the only thing we did, we made entries in the DNS, on our DNS servers before we started the failover or failback. That is done once, and that just takes care of it. But Zerto allows you to inject in IP, and you don't have to do that anymore once you are doing your failover or your failback.
Great. Okay, perfect. So someone here has a question. How does Zerto handle RDMs that are presented to a Windows failover cluster running on virtual machines? So I can tell you that I know we support physical and virtual RDMs. Shannon, I'm not sure what that means in terms of clustering.
So at the RDM level, though, as you said, both physical and virtual mode RDMs, they can be at either site because we work bidirectionally. So you're able to leverage RDMs in a, for example, an active-passive cluster. Active-active is a different situation, to where you would be looking at the active-active cluster to handle the failure. So they're a bit different solutions for use cases, and but we do support the RDMs, both physical and virtual mode, and that, generally speaking, gets you a very powerful solution in both the source side and the destination side.
Okay, great. So Utsa, another question for you. They're coming in fast now. Someone was wondering, have you done a proof of concept with array-based replication?
Yes. Now, for us, our production side is actually running off our HP storage, and our DRO site is just a VMware host connected to a direct attached storage. So yes, we did, and one of the challenges we got through was that the storage at the DRO site wasn't as fast as that of the production side because we're using a DAS, and that posed a challenge for us. But with Zerto, we're able to use our infrastructure regardless of the high speed on the production side and the low speed on the DRO side. With Zerto, we still had our replication going on, and it's excellent.
Okay. Great. So can Zerto execute a PowerShell script on recovery, or can it only change the IP network? So actually within the VPG configuration, it'll execute a pre and post script. So, and that's configurable on a VPG basis. So Shannon, I don't know if you have anything to add there.
Yeah, I think the IP address change mechanism is a little more GUI based than a PowerShell script. That being said, if you want to use the nice GUI to change either for your test networks or production networks, so there's two different sets of IP addresses that we can change to, but we can also change the different virtual switches. So let's say, for example, you want to go to an isolated network on the recovery side to do testing because you're using an extended test or a short test. You can do it that way. You also have in that failover operation, that workflow, there are places where you can put in scripts. So you can call scripts to do other things such as change the DNS entries upon the IP address change at the destination site and those type of operations. So by virtue of being able to call a script during the failover, if you didn't want to use the GUI-based IP address changes, you could certainly call it from a script and do the change, reboot the machine, and it comes up. So having that flexibility really optimizes your options in order to get your failover done as quickly and predictably as possible. And with their non-disruptive testing, as Jen talked about, these are things that you can do over and over and not interrupt production traffic or production replication. You can actually, if during testing you had some sort of catastrophic issue, you could initiate the actual failover. So you're really not interfering with production traffic at all or the replication.
Yeah, and just to add a little bit there, so Shannon and I do a webinar the second Tuesday of the month, so the next one's February 18th, and there is a demo of the product so you can see exactly how that works on the re-IPing for test and failover, and these are also recorded on our website, so if you wanted to go there and check out a demo, you know, you just saw the slides that I normally present. Shannon and I just do them together. That's the only difference, so you can kind of fast forward through the slides because you've already seen them and then skip right to the demo. But there's also one on February 18th if you'd like to join us then, and Shannon and myself will be presenting a few extra slides, but then the demo is really what would be the new information. So in Utsa, another question for you. Any problems with overwhelming a VRA with too much traffic?
Okay. There is no problem with that. Now, no matter how much data that is being generated from your production site, the VRAs are able to handle that amount of data and actually replicate that to the DRO site. My experience so far with Zerto, I've not really seen anything I'll call a problem.
Yeah, I'd like to add a little bit to that, Jen.
Sure.
It's by design. It's by design that the VRAs aren't overwhelmed. So if you look at a VMware cluster, if you are expanding the capacity of your cluster, you're adding host, and for every host you're adding a VRA, and the VRAs on each host perform somewhat of an elegant load balancing as related to the level of operational traffic on each host, because the host itself would be overwhelmed if it had several high I/O VMs running on it. So we scale out with your host cluster, and I can tell you from large cloud service providers running in production with multiple customers running on host, this is not a bottleneck. Bottlenecks start being exposed in other places, such as just the network connectivity itself. The VRAs are specifically designed to be able to handle that. So it's typically not the choke point of when things start slowing down. It's normally network.
Okay, great. And then someone asked, will the slides be available for download? We actually do record the presentation, and it usually takes a little bit to process, and the update should be there by Sunday. That's, you know, just to get things queued up and all that other stuff. So you'll see this on Sunday on our website. Just a bunch of questions came in at one time. I just want to make sure I caught them all, and I think that I did. A couple other questions that we normally get. So some people ask about replicating between different versions of vSphere and things like that. Zerto is able to tolerate that. So as long as you're on vSphere 4 or higher, because we know that you're not going to upgrade your entire environment in one shot. So as you are upgrading your ESX hosts, Zerto Virtual Replication will continue to work. So you'll have no interruption with your upgrades. And we also support vCloud Director. So if you have vCloud Director in one site and you have vSphere 5.5 in another, we can do replication between those two sites with no issue. So,
see another question, Jen, a follow-up question on the VRA, the best practice on guest to VRA ratio. We actually have best practice guides on it, but it's not so much the number of VM guests as it is the number of protected volumes. So if a VM has, say, 2 different virtual disks attached to it, that would be 2 volumes. So bidirectionally, the total number of volumes that we support is 500, which, as you can imagine, that's a lot of guests on a single host, and you normally start distributing it out for other reasons. And that's our guideline. Will it stop at 500? Certainly not, but it's where we would recommend you start spreading it out a little bit more.
Okay, we'll see if any other questions come in, but I will just let everyone know that we really, really do recommend you to do a proof of concept. because as you heard from Utsa, he was kind of skeptical about the product. Would it really work this well? And he got installed in an hour, and it worked really well for him. So we encourage you, if you'd like to do a proof of concept, please contact us. Let us know. We'd be happy to set that up for you. And I did see a couple other questions come in. So Utsa, recommended VMs built within one data store. So you had that recommendation for the best practices. Utsa, can you please elaborate on that?
Okay. We had machines built from different data stores. Now, those were our real challenges when it came to replicating. The other solutions couldn't really handle it. But Zerto did, Zerto handled it. So we were able to replicate 4 VMDKs sitting in 4 different data stores into one single data store at the GRO site. Now, we could do failover to that single data store and do failback to the 4 different data stores on the production site. So why I made this recommendation is if you are going in for other products, you have a lot of challenges with that. But with Zerto, Zerto was able to take care of this. That was the design we really had for our machine. But because we got Zerto, we ended up not changing that design. So we maintained that 4 VMDKs for our SQL Server machine, and that's what we're using till today. We have increased I/O and all that, all the features that come with splitting the VMDKs. So we are happy, we chose Zerto, and we're running with that.
Okay,
great. Yeah, I can add to that a little bit. I think it's more a question of flexibility, because one of the constraints that Utsa talked about was he only had a single attached data store at his destination site. Yeah. So having that constraint, what it tells you is we don't care as far as Zerto goes. We can take these source volumes and replicate all of them to a single data store that's presented to the cluster at your recovery site. Yet when he does his automatic failback rollback operation, it goes back to the source data stores that they came from. So it's not, globbing them all together, and then he's got work to do once he does a failback operation. It's very elegant because we're down at the VMDK level of granularity of replication. So we can map it to a single data store at the destination site. Yet when it fails back, it goes back to the source destination stores that he has laid out for performance.
Okay, and another question on the best practices. So Utsa, you said you recommend the fastest disk for VPG and journal at the recovery site, or do you want all fast disks everywhere? I guess you had recommended the 15K disks. Do you have any, can you elaborate on that?
I made a recommendation of 15K drives across the board, because for our own infrastructure, we have 15K drives on the production side and 7.2K drives at the GRO side. That slows down failback, because the data, the speed at which the data is being pushed out is not as fast as the speed it was being pushed in from the 15K drives. So my recommendation is we should use fast drives at both ends. Because of cost, when we started off, we couldn't get that amount of speed on both sides. But my recommendation is both sides should have fast drives. Even if you end up having slow drives, Zerto will still be able to replicate your machines.
Okay, Utsa, and I don't know if this is a follow-up. No, it's a different person asking. But he was wondering if you've used solid-state disks.
That is in our plan for the next quarter, because we got the EMC VNX 5400 for that, exactly for that feature. But we started off with 15K drives, SAS drives, and that's fine.
Okay, great. All right, so it looks like, and it's funny, Shannon and I would do this webinar, and I always say there are no more questions, and then true to form, one question has come in. So, Shannon, I think this is for you. Can you aptly case about dual SQL Server, active standby, or active active? I think, can you apply case? I don't know, can you see the question? Shannon's the one that just came in. Back to about active standby or active active?
Yeah, so your SQL servers, are you running an active passive mode or just a single SQL server? What's your configuration?
We have just a single SQL Server running.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So with Zerto, you could do active passive. Active would really be at an application level of protection at that point for that app. We have a best practice guide on SQL Server that could send. That's helps with the question. But the clustering of an active cluster is to my knowledge, I don't think anyone's running it that way. At least having us protect both of them, it would be sort of a suspenders and a belt type thing. I think they kind of be competing with each other.
Okay, and Utsa, someone has a question on your HA strategy for SQL. Are you mirroring or are you leveraging Zerto?
We're just leveraging on Zerto.
Okay.
Yeah.
And someone said they'd like the SQL guide spoken of for the active, so we have that person's name and contact, so Shannon and I will follow up with you on that. And then someone asks, Utsa, or Shannon, maybe both of you can answer this, if source disks were quicker than destination disks, what is the impact to where replication is synchronous? And then a follow-up is impact to live service where replication is synchronous.
Okay.
Okay,
Shannon, you take that.
Yeah, so we are asynchronous, so we're not synchronous. If the source disk are faster than the destination disk, just as in his scenario, it doesn't necessarily mean anything as far as the replication part goes. Where you're going to see it is when he fails over, it's not going to be as fast, simply because you're running on a slower disk. So it becomes a function of, in his use case was, he had a single attached storage to his destination site's server. So it's a matter of being alive versus performance. So in his current condition, it would run slower, obviously, because it's on a slower disk. And if performance needs to be equal at the destination site, that's where you would create similar type of hardware infrastructure to support it. The overarching message here is, regardless of the storage, the server, and the configurations, he has a solution that he can fail over and sit back and watch it happen, with the known condition that the performance is going to be a bit less than his production location.
All right, Shannon, I think you just nailed it right there, because that's exactly what our experience is like here. Failback takes longer time for us, and we are aware of it, and we have plans in place to replace our DRO infrastructure completely. But the beauty about it is that we are in compliance. We have a replication solution that works for us.
Yeah, and from a risk tolerance standpoint, you've accomplished, you can survive a disaster. And so the next step is just making it to where you can survive a disaster and have the same performance. So those are two mutually exclusive things, really. Rapid recovery and then performance would be your next step. But at least you're in a great position to build off of, that you're protected and you can survive a disaster.
Okay.
Great. So this has been great discussion. We've actually had 20 minutes of questions and dialogue. So that's fantastic that all of you are so engaged. So I have a couple of requests here for the best practice guide, and I see those people's names. So Shannon and I will pass that on to the right people to follow up with you. Utsa, thank you so much for joining us. You can see how much better it is when we have a customer on. All the dialogue and the questions is fantastic. So thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
So and thanks to all. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
Thank you so much.
Oh, anytime, anytime. So thanks to all of you for staying on. As I mentioned, this will be recorded and posted if you'd like to catch it up later. And if you'd like to see a demo of the product, you can join us 2 weeks. So you can register for that on our website. Thank you again, and have a great day.